All right, Colorado fans, we are talking about what would you do in this game versus NDSU. We already talked about what would you do on defense. Question now is what would you do on offense if you're the Colorado Buffaloes? We're going to talk about the NDSU defense on this episode of Alpine Garage Sports. Okay, we are only a couple of days away from the game, and we are breaking down just a little bit of kind of the offense and the defense of NDSU, so we know kind of what we want to do. So as a fan base, obviously at this point, we are going to guess at what Colorado is going to do versus NDSU, and I think you guys know my stance on how I want to run the offense. If it were me running the offense, how I would run the offense. But I'm going to give you the statistics for NDSU, their key players on defense, kind of give you my roundabout idea of kind of what their defense is like. And then you tell me in the comments what you want to do on offense. How do you want to play this game? And then we're going to roll this up tomorrow night. Actually, on Wednesday night, we're going to roll up the offense and the defense that you guys put into place in the comments. And we're going to talk about it a little bit, see if we can maybe nail it going into this game. So first of all, you've seen a whole lot of stuff going on with Tim Polasek, the head coach of NDSU, really praising Shedeur Sanders and the offense that he is going to be bringing against the NDSU defense. That speaks volumes to me. Obviously there's a lot of respect there, and there should be, because Shedeur Sanders is likely the best quarterback in the country against an FCS school. So obviously there should be a lot of respect there. So the question is Tim Polasek going to engineer their game plan to stop the pass, which is going to maybe make them vulnerable with the run? That is the question. The other thing too is Grant Olson, who is the new defensive coordinator for NDSU this year, was the linebacker coach last year, so obviously very familiar with the team. And I think the main storyline for NDSU going into this game is they are the machine. They are the program. They haven't changed in, 25, 30 years. And so they're coming solidified, regardless of who is and who is not playing. They are the program. The program. That's what they're billing themselves as, is the steady, we're not going to change much, we're going to keep winning. That type of program is consistent against Colorado, which they have quoted in their media tons of times as the experiment. Which is going to win? Right? That's the big thing now. So they promote their linebacker coach to their defensive coordinator. And so their defense should be run very similar to the way they have in the past. Now, I'm going to say their two top players, or two of their top players on defense, are not there for this game. One, obviously, Cole Wisniewski is their number one tackler from last year, safety. He had 92 tackles last year. I mean, he really kind of drove that defense. And he is out, maybe even for the season. He's definitely going to be out for this game. And so they're losing their best tackler, and they're kind of their core of their defense, their leader in their defense. And then also one of their best linemen from last year, which is Jake Cava, who is responsible for 8 sacks and 15 TFLs last year. He graduated. He's not there anymore. But they're still bringing back a very good defensive line, and I would say a good safety group as well. Their linebacker core is super strong. So if you look at, for instance, their number 2 tackler on the team last year was Logan Kopp, who was a linebacker, still with the team this year. He had 85 tackles last year, which is almost as much as Wisniewski did. So between those two, they pretty much ran the defense on tackles. He's going to be there this year, 3.5 sacks, 7.5 TFLs. So he is going to be a menace right there in the middle. And then you also have Dylan Hendricks, who is a defensive end, 10.5 TFLs and 6.5 sacks. He was their number 2 lineman last year in TFLs and sacks. He is going to be a menace. Also, Jackson Dutenheffer, defensive tackle, 3.5 sacks, 3.5 TFLs. That's going to be a pretty solid line this year. And their defensive backs, this is who the media, the NDSU media is kind of touting as their starters, is going to be Ryan Jones with 18 tackles last year, 6'3", 205. This is a pretty big backfield, actually. They're saying that their playmaker this year on defense, now that they've lost Wisniewski, is going to be a guy by the name of Darius Givens. And he is 6'3", 209. He's a safety. Last year he had 12 tackles. And then they have a guy that on their defense played quite a bit last year, Sam Young, 5'11", 182, had 66 tackles, 2 TFLs last year. He was their number 3 tackler last year on the team. So their number 2 and their number 3 tackler still there, still playing. You can kind of see how the core of their defense, even though they've lost their leader, let's say, they did it earlier in fall practice, so they've been able to practice without him, and they've been able to get some continuity as far as that's concerned. It's not like they lost Wisniewski right before the game. That loss to Wisniewski is going to be huge. Everybody's talking about it. Even NDSU is a little bit worried about their defense without him. But the ability for this team, if they're considering themselves, you know, I'm calling them the program, the steady program that doesn't change much, they're probably able to get Givens and a couple of other guys in there to kind of take the reins. They're expecting Givens to be the replacement for Wisniewski this year. But when you break it down to the very bottom line, out of the 10 top tacklers from last year, they're only returning 5. So they're returning half of their top tacklers. And out of the top 5 tacklers they have, they're only returning 2. So this defense, even though there's a lot of seniority in this defense, a lot of last year's production is not coming back. Now you go up against Colorado, who has one of the best passing and receiving groups in the country, with the best quarterback in college football and one of the best receiving groups in college football. That's going to be a huge problem for their secondary. The second thing is we have a revamped running offense now with a revamped offensive line. So we have the ability now. Okay, we have the ability. They were a good defense last year, NDSU was, but they still allowed 20 points per game. They still allowed 120 yards per game on the ground. So it's not an impenetrable defense, and a lot of that production left from last year. So the question to you, the Colorado fans here on Alpine Garage Sports, is this. We can probably pass on their defense pretty well, right? I don't think we're going to be able to do that going forward in this in the Big 12 without having what happened last year and getting us shut down middle of the season. Some of our tougher games are at the end of the season. So here's the question for you. Do we establish our running game in this game? Do we, regardless of what we can do with the passing game, do we try to establish the running game so that we can get those reps in, we can get the offensive line used to run blocking, and do we try to put up 150 running yards, which is what I think we should be averaging this year in order to be a big contender in the Big 12? Are we going to get that 150 yards in on this game? Or are we going to let Shedeur rain on their secondary and put up 550 yards passing in this game, let's say? Over 400 definitely, just to prove that we can do it. And obviously I think we could win passing in this game. I think we could. I've told you before, I think it's a 52-17 game. I'm still sticking with that. I think that we're going to expose NDSU at home. And I think that if we do it right, we could really establish our running game and then let Shedeur Sanders just rain all over that secondary. I think we can have both. I think we'd have 150 yards on the ground. I think we could have 400 yards passing. And yes, that's a lot of yardage, guys. But honestly, I think if we're going to do it, this is the team we're going to do it against. What say you in the comments? Please let me know what you think. Should we establish the run? Regardless of what else happens, should we establish the run against NDSU? Or do we just put the ball in Shedeur's hands and just let him go crazy and have it be similar to last year where we end up with sub 100 yards in rushing, and we basically just allow Shedeur just to go in there and show what he can do and really put our passing game out there for the rest of the world to see. Looking forward to your comments. We're going to roll this up tomorrow night. Offense and defense, what do you say? We're going to put that game plan together and we're going to establish that tomorrow night. Thank you for tuning into Alpine Garage Sports, folks. We will see you in the next video.